Welcome everyone and Happy New Year. This is the Crazy Kite Twisty puzzle. It's a face-turning deltoidal icositetrahedron with some additional stuff going on. So following the traditional puzzle naming scheme, it's a crazy face-turning deltoidal icositetrahedron plus with crazy centers modified to add a few more cuts that become accessible when scrambling. All of the turns are jumbling and shapeshifting turns. And these cuts across the edges like this are the ones that, so they're not currently available, and they're the ones that give it the plus nomenclature. They become accessible later during the solve, or the scramble as well. And then these additional cuts in the center circles that don't connect with any of the outer cuts are the ones that I added to also, enable further scrambling of the centers. As with other crazy puzzles, this one is set up so that some of the centers stay stationary when a face is turning and some do not. I currently have it set so that these four faces have the stationary centers. So here's what that looks like. And then all of the rest of them have centers that move along with the outer pieces. So it is configurable, although this initial prototype did have a slight issue where some of the faces have to move together with the outer pieces, but that's a mistake that I have fixed. So it'll be fixed in any further revisions or other variants of this puzzle that I make. So the way that the mechanism works is kind of similar to how other puzzles with this switching behavior work. So there's a piece underneath each of the caps that you can reorient to decide whether you want the center to move together with the outer pieces or together with the inner pieces. And it's stuck. All right, there we go. So I have just a little cutout of the core here, and then this is the piece that lets you select whether you want, or which way you want things to turn. So if you want the two outer ones to move together, you put it in like this, and it can turn freely in the core. And then let me orient these together. And it'll engage the teeth on this piece, and then as well as the teeth on this piece. And so now these outer two pieces are locked together, but they can all move freely relative to the core. And if we take this piece and turn it over instead, we can get the opposite behavior. We can lock so as you can see, this middle piece turns freely now, and we can lock the outer piece to the core and let the middle turn freely like that. So this is a pretty similar idea to the way a lot of these other puzzles have been implemented. Some of them use squares or triangles or diamonds or teeth on the parts or whatever. But the essential idea is that you have some sort of switching way to determine whether the top centerpiece is locked to the one underneath it or to the core, but not both. So I'm really happy I was able to get this working so well with 3D printed parts. It actually wasn't too much trouble to get these interlocking parts to fit tightly together, and they work great. This puzzle is somewhat related to the Crazy Dodorambus Plus and the Crazy Romdo Plus by MF8. I recently noticed that without the second round of unbandaging cuts that he did, Eitan shares face-turning deltoidal icositetrahedron plus plus actually kind of resembles the Dodorambus Plus and the Romdo Plus. And so because of this, I decided to try making this crazy version with the circle centers. I also expanded the center circle a bit outside the kite shapes at the centers of the faces to make these tiny petals show up. And then along with, adding the tiny petals, I also added these additional cuts to free up and allow more scrambling of the centers. One thing I was pleasantly surprised by was how there's this like almost perfect 11-way symmetry in the centers. It looks very equal. I don't think it is quite perfect 11-way symmetry with the placement of these petals, but it's remarkably close. The tiny petals have very narrow necks as well, and I was relieved to find a mechanism that would work. for them. And not only does it work, it actually works really well. I'm not sure if you can see this on video, but the turning quality of this thing is phenomenal. I'm very pleased with how well it turns. And, as with anything this complex, of course, you have to pay careful attention to the alignment, but it really does turn wonderfully well. And once you get the turn started, it doesn't catch pretty much ever. So let's see. This puzzle has a ton of pieces, so assembly and stickering took quite a while. And there are 24 different faces on a deltoidal icosahedron. So for example, that means that there are 264 of these tiny little pedal pieces. And each face has 40 stickers, meaning that there are nearly 1,000 stickers in total on this. I don't like sanding, so like I usually do, I just glued the stickers down rather than sanding the surface of the puzzle. And this does mean that there are just a couple places where there's some glue smeared, but I did manage to keep those to a minimum. Prior to stickering this puzzle, it had this really amazing shimmering look because the layer lines on each face run in so many different directions. And it looks really cool when you turn it in the light. So I'll put a video on screen showing what that looks like. To some extent, though, the shimmering effect still does come through even with the stickers on. It's just not as obvious. But yeah, I'm very pleased with how this looks, and I felt slightly bad stickering it, but it came out really well. So I printed this one using Overture PLA Plus on my modified Anycubic Cobra Neo. It weighs 1,115 grams and is 145 millimeters in diameter. Oh, and the name Crazy Kite is pretty straightforward. There's a kite in the center, and the nomenclature for puzzles with circles like this, especially when you have mixed, some with the centers fixed and some not, is crazy. So it's a crazy kite. So that's how I came up with the name. Thank you.